Young ladies from Boston here, down here visiting New Orleans. You work in immigration, is that what you?
I have. I've done a lot of community activism, and I actually used to be a community organizer doing both mainly with youth, but working with families as well in Boston.
And both of you have something to say, at least with the Boston bombing. We know that, was in the news recently, of course, because
the trials were going on.
Right. Well, how do you feel about it? You think that the brothers were set up? Do you think it was a false flag? Do you believe what the government says? What's the deal?
I mean, honestly, in my opinion, it's one of those things where I feel like these events that are continuously happening are sort of to put on a show and to continue to allow the U.S. and its people to continue to live in fear, so that you can continue instilling laws, etc., that continue to control us, and to also things sort of like things like the Patriot Act, or to be able to allow just the government to come in and control our everyday life.
Wonderful. And you have a brother that was at the...
Yeah, he was at near the finish line, and he was there when the bombs went off. Luckily, he was not hurt, but he was pretty shook up.
What are some of his observations that he...
When it happened?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he saw a lot of injured people. He saw a lot of injured people, and that really shook him. He just I remember him telling us that it was like being in a war zone, and just seeing a lot of injured people, and a lot of commotion, and people running everywhere. And he didn't talk about it for a while, because when you go through something, if you've never gone through something like that, and you go through something like that, it kind of leaves you a little uneasy.
Now there were some people that said there was a drill going on at that time. So I don't know if you've heard of Urban Shield, but the government has admitted to Operation Urban Shield, which was a drill that would practice a bomb going off using backpacks. And there was a man named Alastair Stevenson, a running coach from Alabama, who said there were loudspeakers going off at the finish line saying, "This is just a drill, be calm, this is just a drill." This is before the bombs went off. Bomb sniffing dogs and everything else. There are pictures of paramilitary men standing around with huge black backpacks with walkie-talkies and what looked like detonators in their hands. So your brother never saw anything like that, or you can see? And also, this Urban Shield employed crisis actors.
Yeah, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. Everything that happened in the aftermath of the Boston Marathon seemed very orchestrated, and you had tanks that were coming into the city and literally just patrolling in neighborhoods that had nothing to do with the area where the bombers were supposedly hiding, or they were residential homes.
I mean, to see like Watertown, which is where he was hiding, to see that whole place shut down,
and tanks literally at your doorstep pointing.
But not even just Watertown, but you weren't there when they were born. But my family lives in Winthrop, and I remember I was there during the time that they were searching for him, and all of Boston was just shut down. And I have never seen anything like that before.
Again, fear, right?
For a teenager.
Yeah. So you think
and you're allowing for now military operations, etc., to become, to be able to completely shut down the.
So you think the whole was orchestrated, set up beforehand, and a false flag operation? Is that what you're saying?
Honestly, I
wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Okay.
I honestly would not be surprised. I'm originally from Colombia, and my parents migrated here for reasons that have to do with the U.S. military coming into our town and basically just doing their thing and destroying things and tearing everything in sight. So I'm not surprised. We're very familiar with this narrative and very familiar with this story. So I wouldn't be surprised that they're now pointing the gun at their own people as well.
Wonderful. On immigration, that was in the news today too. On C-SPAN, I was listening. They had a man that was, they're trying to push the narrative, of course, it's a very strange thing. The borders are wide open.
Trust and believe, yes.
Yeah. What are your feelings on the entire immigration scene right now? What do you think? Where do you think it's broken? Where do you know?
You got an hour? You got a lot to
Well, in the synopsis, as quickly.
No, I mean, honestly, it's such a game. You're playing with people's lives, right? You're playing with families and you're playing with children at the end of the day, and it's politics. So we are unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't think anything's going to be done around immigration. As a community organizer, the most that I can do at this point is to continue to educate my community so that they continue to live as safe as possible. But safety is something that it's rare when you have raids that are happening at train stations, where there are raids that are happening at supermarkets, where there are immigration officials that are coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning and basically tearing up a house looking for someone, because this is the picture of the person that lives in this house, but this picture is one extremely old, and this person, nobody's seen this person. And a lot of times they don't know their own rights. And a lot of times, a lot of the education and things that have to, it's just about education, right? But in terms of a national immigration law or something happening, I don't think it's going to happen for a very long time, despite all the mobilization.
What would be wrong with enforcing the laws that are already on the books?
Which ones?
Well, the immigration laws. I mean, the ones that have been on the books. I mean, you know, of course, and this is a Cloward and Piven type of deal, which has been planned. I mean, you open up the borders, you overwhelm the welfare system, you collapse the economy, then you come in with the solution. You know, and this is what we see happening right now. We have open borders. Just come on in. I mean, every swing and sombrero. We don't care. We're coming in and we're giving them what, you know, more than the veterans I talked to are getting. I mean, you know, veterans, we have 200,000 veterans on the street here right now.
Yeah.
Last year, or this past year, 2 million American homeless children applied for school. And yet, you can come over from a South American country, you know, and we're seeing them being bused, housed, fed, clothed.
That's the thing, though. It's like, in my opinion, it's about changing that narrative particularly, because if you look at how much is, and you would obviously know this, but if you look at how much is spent in military spending throughout the, just in terms, if you look at just the budget, there are ways that you can allocate that money so that the veterans can get more benefits.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, if we just cut, and pardon me, but if we just stopped the wars and brought our troops home from the bases, we'd have enough money to feed, house, and clothe everybody in this country several times over.
Right. And part of it too is you have to get back into sort of the root cause of what is making people come here. If I had a choice, I would be back in Colombia.
Really?
I would be. And I can say that my parents would be as well. And it's one of those things where it's, if you're, sadly, the U.S. government and the U.S. has for decades come into our towns and basically just cause massacres, cause dictatorship. I mean, if you look into the
on the pretext of what? Mostly the fighting drugs? Or
yeah, I mean, if you look at, that's one of the reasons why they came into Colombia.
Yeah,
so recently, the war on drugs, and to this day, we're still not, it's still not eradicated.
No, it's a racket. Right? We know who's really bringing them the drugs. It's the military.
So if you look at, you have to, honestly, in order to have a conversation around immigration, and not just looking at the laws in this country, you have to look at externally what's also going on, right? And politically speaking, economically speaking, you have to look at the influence that the U.S. has had in Latin America and in other countries as well that is forcing people to come into the U.S.
And I feel like it's a way for people, like, for the U.S. to blame the problem on the, you know, people who are coming into the U.S. But I feel like, based on what she knows more about this than I do, but, you know, from the stuff that I have read, it's like they're trying to blame all these problems on, like, all these people that are coming into the country, and, like, we're taking all the jobs and all the money, and, like, we're funding all these people, but again, fear, right? That narrative of fear.
Yeah, but they are doing that. I mean, you understand that when you look around, it's again, are you familiar with Cloward and Piven? Are you familiar with, all right.
So much education.
This was written in the 60s, and they gave some professors, look, if you were going to take over this country, how would you do it? You know, you obviously can't do military, so how would you do it?
Yeah.
So they came up with this plan where you, again, open up the borders, flood the system with illegal immigrants, destroyed.
Undocumented. Illegal immigrants is not a term we like.
Well, illegal, whatever. They're here without going through the normal processes. They're here and they're overwhelming the welfare system. This is part of the plan, and what it is to destroy the economy, because you cannot destroy democracy from the outside. You destroy it from the inside through various methods, and one way is through socializing everything, overburdening that social welfare program, collapsing the economy, and then you come in with the solution, which is full-blown tyranny. And that's what's is happening now. So, the people that are coming over are the victims just as much as we are, the people that are here. The thing is to stop them coming over. I mean, we have to secure the borders. If we're going to have anything, we have to have, you can't have a country without borders.
You could.
But what does that lead into? That leads into centralized world government, which makes matters even worse, because now you're taking the power further away from the people by centralizing it. So the best thing to have is to have sovereign countries with many different tribes and parties, all speaking at, they're getting their representation, all being able to have a word. But just open up the borders and say, it's all kumbaya, let's all have one word. Oh, fine, it sounds great, but who's going to run that government?
I mean, at this point, we've politicized the border. At least, and typically when we talk about the border, we're talking about the Mexican border with no acknowledgement of the fact that
the Canadian border is just as wide open.
It's just as wide open. And I think that part of the conversation, it's a part of the conversation around immigration is a very racist one as well. Right? Because you're not talking about...
It's going to be used to divide and conquer. You see, that's another aspect of how they destroy us. Mm-hmm. Which you say, it fosters, using different terms will foster, certain emotions. Mm-hmm. And that's just it. Part of Cloward and Piven, part of the destruction of a democracy is to get people fighting amongst each other. White against black, black against brown and yellow and red, and everybody against the police. So we wind up fighting each other and not the powers that be that created this situation.
Exactly. And that's around immigration, that's exactly what is currently happening as well. That's part of what the narrative. I mean, even the term illegal is already demonizing and criminalizing a whole entire community.
Yes, but some truths are self-evident. The fact that when you come over here illegally, when you cross the border illegally, you are here illegally. That's not a derogatory term.
I mean, in my opinion, it is.
Well, but that's your opinion.
Right.
But in the cold truth of the light of the fact of the matter, they came over illegally.
Or they came over undocumented without the piece of paper that allows them to just...
Which is illegal. I have known people they've gone... I've known people that have gone through the years of process and it took to come here legally. And what do you say to them? I mean, how do you screw you? Sorry you had to spend years and money and take the test and show that you just got to walk across the border. The thing is, there's a reason for laws, and there's a reason that they're selectively enforced. To not selectively, to not enforce the laws of just allowing the illegals to come over is part of the Cloward and Piven program to bring this country to its knees. They foster this situation.
Part of, I respect your point. But part of it for me is that in that point there's little to no acknowledgement of the fact that it's not that they want to come here, it's just that the conditions and the living situation in their home countries. I mean, you try living with 20 cents a day.
Well, you mentioned you'd like to go back to Colombia. Why aren't you there?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you'd rather be, most of the immigrants I'm speaking to, unless they become extremely successful here, which is hard for them to do, other than the fact that Latinos have made up 100% of the economic growth over the past decade.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Well, again, why? Because they're getting things that, are being denied other people. Again, I don't fault them for that. If someone's going to give you something to get ahead, go ahead, take care, take advantage of it. And plus, most of the Latin American people I speak to are extremely hardworking people. So, you know, I mean, goes hand in hand. I don't fault anybody come over here legally working hard and, you know, and winning and succeeding. That's the American dream. That's what we're doing. But to come over here illegally, no, it's, and again, it's no, they're, like you said, they're being forced to do it because the powers that be have created the situations down there that bring them here. But what happens is they wind up bringing their problems here. You know, that created down there.
We're on two different ends of the spectrum. I mean, and it's one of those things, immigration is one of those things that it's a very hot topic right now, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I have personally lived a very different narrative, and I have worked within my community and have the narrative to which you speak of is something that I haven't been necessarily privy to.
Well, we have somebody, the phone call this morning, it was in the CNN, the guy brought up this point.
But it's CNN. And
Well,
CNN,
well, excuse me, not CNN, that's C-SPAN. C-SPAN. Excuse me, C-SPAN.
Yeah.
Right. But the guy called, was a call, and he said, look, I try to get my kids, because when I was a kid, I mean, you know, my first job was cutting lawns. Mm-hmm. It's impossible now for teenagers, American teenagers, to find those entry-level jobs. Because, I mean, I don't care. You walk by any construction site, and look, New Orleans couldn't have been rebuilt if it wasn't for the, Latin community came here and rebuilt it. So, again, you know, I understand the situation here, and then they've been forced into it. But the fact still remains, they were forced to do something illegal. It doesn't, just because they were forced to do something illegal, doesn't make them legal.
There are currently, if you look into SB 1070, if you look into a lot of the laws that are currently being enacted around immigration, like just to quote unquote fix the problem, a lot of them are pipelines to be able to build the prison industry.
Absolutely.
And if you look at programs like
which is a whole other industry.
Which is a completely other industry. And if you look at programs such as Secure Communities, they're programs that basically, whether or not you have a criminal record, they round you up and they just push you right in. Our politicians are completely invested in programs, in these types of programs, and I think it's about assessing that and having that conversation versus putting the blame on the community and on the people. That's where I lay, and that's the kind of conversation and the narrative that I would like to spin, because if we begin to have a conversation like the one that we're currently having, you get into the nitty-gritty and you get into you're not going to be able to get very much further. I think we both are able to handle it, but the majority of people won't be able to. And I think it's really about keeping our politicians accountable and keeping the government accountable for what it is and what it's saying. Because at the end of the day, I mean, they want us to do this. They want us to bicker. They want us to fight. They want us to live in fear. It's the only way that they're going to be able to control us and to control our minds.
Well, God bless the two of you. With two beautiful, intelligent women on our side, I can't see how we can possibly lose this fight. I really appreciate what you're doing, your insight and all into it, and God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
Yeah.